everybody. Welcome to another episode of Secure the Seat. We're talking about my new book, Talk to Me Nice, The 7 Trust Languages for a Better Workplace. My name is Minda Hart. We are streaming here on LinkedIn. Make sure you tag somebody because we're having great conversations this week, every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And so today's trust language is demonstration. I wrote this book because I realized that many of us are not speaking each other's trust language at work. What I might need from you may be different from what you need from me, and there may be this expectation gap. And so if we understood what each other needed to build trust instead of erode trust, whether that's intentionally or unintentionally, then we have a better communication outcome. It enhances the relationship. And so honored that you're here. I'm excited because my brother from another mother, Stephen A. Hart, and if you've been watching me for any amount of time on LinkedIn, you know who this man is. But if you don't, he is an award-winning podcast host, a founder, CEO. He is my personal CMO. So I don't do too much without asking his opinion. So I'm going to bring him up and we're going to have a conversation around the language of demonstration. Hey, bro.
And what is up? How you doing?
Oh, it feels so good. Michael, my brother, you know Mike, but for those who may not, the band is back together. We had Kanika yesterday.
Yes.
Steven. Let people know who you are, bro, for those who may not be familiar with you, and make sure you follow Steven right here on LinkedIn Live.
Yeah. So, Minda, before I get into me, I just want to say 3 quick things. One, congrats on 6 years of the memo. Last week was your 6-year anniversary of the memo, and I've been rocking with you for like Kanika. We've been riding this train from the memo forward, and congratulations on Talk to Me Nice, and also too, I just want to big up and make space for Boston Hearts, who I love that you dedicated this book to Boston. So just want to start off there. For those that don't know me, I am as Minda shared, I am a podcast. I'm a creator at the core. Launched Trailblazers.fm, which is now I Am Black Success, nearly 10 years ago, which is hard to believe. And today I'm the founder and marketing strategist of Blu Oak Marketing, helping leaders, experts, and service-based business owners to articulate their message and brand. And yeah, I'm happy to be here with you today.
Well, I'm excited for you to be here because we have a lot to talk about. One of my trust languages, and for those who may not be familiar yet or you haven't got the book, what are you waiting for? Make sure you get that in your car. I also, if you like hearing my voice, go to Audible. It feels like we're having a conversation. So definitely do that. But the 7 trust languages are transparency, feedback, follow through, acknowledgement, sensitivity, security, and demonstration. And Stephen, part of demonstration is not just showing, but telling, right? Because oftentimes in the workplace and in our personal lives, we do a lot of talking. We say we're going to
a lot of talking.
We do a lot of talking, but we don't do enough telling, right? And so I'm curious, in the book, chapter 7, and I talk about demonstration. Some people need you to show and tell them the behaviors in which, if you say that women are important here at work, and then we take all the women ERGs away, does that demonstrate that women have a role here, have a place here, right? If we celebrated Juneteenth last year and now we don't celebrate it anymore, what do you think that demonstrates? And where do you think trust lands with the people who benefited from those programs, right? And so there's a lot of things taking place in the workplace today, and those demonstrations are hanging on by a thread. And so I'm curious what your definition of demonstration is, and if you could tell us about a time when that was real for you, that show and tell.
Yeah, 100%. So if Minda, if trust is um trust for me is like confidence, right? That somebody's going to show up, they're going to act right, they're going to behave right. And demonstration is sort of you carrying out that behavior, right? That action time after time after time. And so when I was, as I was reading chapter 7, by the way, I am a big believer in buying the audiobook. I'm an Apple Podcast, Apple Books person, but I almost have always listened to your audio, and I love listening to Minda read a book. So I've been listening to the book, and I really enjoy some of the stories all throughout the book, but in chapter 7. But as I was thinking about this, I mean, there is a dozen scenarios I could share in the workplace. One that came to mind has nothing to do with the workplace. Actually, has to do with probably the biggest contract I have entered into, and that's marriage. Right? Um, I, Kristen, and I, my wife Kristen, uh, got married more than 17 years ago, right? And some of you who know my story, you've heard me share this many times over, but hey, we walked up to an altar and said, yeah, I value you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I do, for better or worse. Minda, worse came 3 weeks into my marriage, right? I had a business that lost several $1 million 3 weeks into our marriage, before the ink dried on our marriage cert, before we could even get on our cruise ship for a delayed honeymoon, right? That fell apart. And the demonstration from Kristen, right, was, hey, look, I'm a rock with you. I'm not second guessing this. I'm not hesitating. I'm committed to what I said, right? I do, for better or worse. And despite me promising, the $1 million brownstone, and shifting gears to saying, hey, you might need to pay the rent for a little bit, right? There was commitment there, and there was follow through there. And from that point forward, right, I had to carry out on my promise to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna make right by my promises, right? And on both sides, there was a commitment, not just to say, hey, I value you, or I'm going to be here, right? Like, it was actual actions taken from that point forward. It was an ugly 18 months, but as a result of our commitment to, that demonstration in that 18 months, we're here almost 18 years later.
That'll preach, Stephen A. Hart. That will preach. Okay. I thank you for sharing that, because it's the action, right? It's not just, oh, hey, here we are, the business is going down, but you had to demonstrate, your actions had to show that. And Kristen, you actually showed that trust happens on two ways, right? She had
Mhm.
to trust what you said was true based off of how your actions aligned with the values that you stated. And she had to keep showing up and demonstrate that she trusted you to say, okay, today feels like hell, but I know heaven is on the way, right? And I think that that is where many of us lose trust in our colleagues, lose trust in our companies, because we say one thing, but the actions don't align with the value, right?
It's important you say that too, because hey, look, for a good long time, right? There's always this indelible mark in that whole instance, right? That whole thing that happened. And when a year ago, I said, hey, I'm about to step out of corporate and step back into the entrepreneurship lane. And look, it was a tough one to be like, hey, I don't want to repeat what we had happen before, right? And it's that commitment, that continued commitment. It's not static, right? There's a dynamic nature to that.
I love that. And it reminds me of, I know a lot of people have heard and even probably said this themselves, but actions speak louder than words,
Action
right?
speaks louder. Yep.
And that's where it stems, because I think we say a lot of things to each other at work and outside of work, but our actions don't align. And some of you, your trust language is all about the actions, right? Remember when Tom Cruise said, "Show me the money"? You need someone to show you the action. What? All that's nice and all, but what is the action? What is the behavior that is going to make me at ease, right?
I think that's a talk to me nice t-shirt.
I think so. I'll consult my CMO about that later on. Okay. I was thinking about what you were telling us about the story of that action, right? And I was thinking about some of the ways in which actions are quickly eroded. And that's, I talk about it in the book, but favoritism, right? When we say everybody, we include everybody, but you only have your go-tos, right? Your actions do not align with everybody gets a fair playing field, right?
Mhm.
Or we say that we want to promote from within, but our actions state
Mm.
we love getting somebody from the other company, right? And what does
Mhm.
that do? Trust starts here. And when we keep seeing those actions, those demonstrations, it just cuts and cuts. Or if we do say that we like to promote from within, and I can see the last 5 hires have been demonstrated, the action shows that, hey, we promote, it's a value, right? It's
Yeah.
aligned. And I think that a lot of times people can't articulate where trust has fallen because they don't realize, oh, it's the action, right? It's that your words are not aligning with your actions. What do you think, Stephen?
100%. And there's nothing that eats at my core more than when somebody goes in that direction, makes that commitment,
Mm-hmm.
right, to carry out a particular action, and then don't there's no follow through.
Mm-hmm.
And not only, and sometimes, Minda, I don't even think it needs to be this big massive thing, right? When trust is eroded, I don't need to see you make this big, get over this big hurdle. I just need to see small, consistent moves toward, something that you said you would do, right?
Absolutely. I talk about in the book reservoirs of trust, and it reminds
Mm,
me of that statement is we have to keep putting the chips into of trust in the bank, right? We have to keep building up the reservoir because it doesn't have to be the grand act, right? Like you said, it's the small demonstrations that show me, like to your point, Stephen, maybe you could talk about in your example, how did that when everything fell from underneath you, what were those small demonstrations that built credibility with Chris, right? If you feel comfortable, because I think that's the part, right? Is that credibility, because when we show the action, then that builds the trust, right?
yeah, yeah. I told you that there's an ugly 18 months, right? And look, it was me deciding to work 7 days a week, 80, like 12-hour days, uh, working to make sure I could get back to a place, not to that place, just get back to a place that, uh, one, I felt, respectable in now a marriage, a seat as a husband, right? I also had to get to that place, but one that she could also say, hey, you know what? This dude's living up to the commitment he made. And I can see where we are actually going to go in the right direction over the long term. And I didn't make a mistake.
I think that's important too, because sometimes some of us carry so much mistrust, right? We've seen people say things and not do the things that they say. And so we just put you in that bucket with everybody else, right? And we don't give you a chance to show us what you're really working with, right? And
Yeah.
think about it. If Chris said, you know what, I can't trust this, fill in the blank, get him out of here. I don't care what he has to say. This is not starting off good. If she would have just said, okay, this is how I'm going to view you forever, then the trust would have never been able to breathe, right? It would have never been able to grow. And I think that's partially too when people do erode trust with us, what would it look like to have the conversation, right? Instead of just writing people off.
And the conversation part, the communication, right? In marriage, in business, in leadership, it there is so much to be said about not just making a commitment, but communicating and talking things through and hearing the other side, right? That is so important to being able to see things through, is understanding where that other person, where they want to see you move the needle, right?
You hit it. Let me get my tambourine. What they want you to see. This is the reason why I wrote the book, Stephen, because
Yeah.
I can tell you what trust looks like to me all day long, right? But I have to communicate with you to find out, what does demonstration look like to you, right?
Hmm.
Not what it looks like to me, or
Yeah.
what do some of these other trust languages, because you could be doing all the things, but if they're not meeting her expectation, there's an
Hmm.
expectation gap with trust, right?
Yeah.
I got to do the things that mean something to you,
Right.
right?
So in this same example, right, for me, it's me getting back to this monetary thing that checks a box for me. For for Kristen in the scenario, it was much more about a safety checkbox, right? Am I going to be safe in this marriage, right? Is this somebody that's going to provide when we have kids, when we move into the next chapter of living? For women, that safety box is something that they want checked, right? And so understanding, communicating, but allowing her to express in that scenario what that looked like.
And you're hitting all the boxes for me, because talk to me nice isn't just about, oh, how do we build trust, how do we create trust, but it's also, how do we communicate when this is what good looks like to me. And we have to have those conversations. And I feel like in the workplace, especially when these breakdowns happen, we just create a narrative, right? Oh, that's just Stephen being Stephen, or he just talks, right? And we create this narrative that may or may not be true about the people we work with, when we could communicate with them. For me, just telling me this doesn't really move the needle. But when you show me that we're changing the hiring practices, when you show me, then that really demonstrates to me that I can stick things out with this company a little bit longer, right? And I think
Yeah.
people want to be talked to as humans first, employees second.
Yeah.
You know.
And in the workplace, I just, it irks my nerves, Linda, when I see CEOs, I see leaders talk about the importance of diversity, talking about the importance of uh, elevating women in the workplace, and then the action doesn't follow through, right? And I've seen that firsthand, where, look, uh, not even an ounce of care, right? Uh, on what they said would happen happened, right? There is no small action. There is no action, right, taken towards that. And so yeah, I think there's so much to be said about, I'm thinking of a scenario where um the business said, hey, let's survey and see how everyone feels. And they got that feedback and chose to do nothing with that feedback, right? Instead of taking a small step in the right direction.
In those small steps, Stephen, that's what brings trust back to the center, right? We're not saying that everybody's not going to get it right. Let's just be honest, right? We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to make missteps, not intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, but it's the follow through of it all. So if I've been saying that, women matter here at this company, or that people with disabilities matter at this company, accessibility is important, and then next thing you know, we take it all away. Where do you think trust stands for the people who needed those accessibility, needed the handicap stickers, needed, you know, closed captions on the video conferencing, and we take all that away? We have no conversation, right, about
Hmm.
the why.
Yeah.
um, what would it look like for that person to be able to come and say, hey, I was able to see the closed captions last week, but what happened to them? Oftentimes the fear is so paralyzing that people can't even ask the why, right? And then, if as a leader, if you've been not demonstrating the actions that align with the values that were stated, there's a way to rectify it. And we can acknowledge that we may have dropped the ball on this, but we're committed to accessibility. Next week, we're working on this, right? We can get back in the game. We don't have to pretend that nobody sees what's going on, that everybody just, has blinders on, because people can't do their best work if they don't trust you, period.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not so much even a fear of asking about it. It's the Jamaican in me wanting to cuss you out when right? When you don't even acknowledge. You just ignore.
Yeah, and giving us a pizza party isn't going to solve the problem.
No.
That's not a demonstration that aligns with the values, right? Me looking at the About Us page and seeing, if you say diversity matters here, seeing that for myself, the show and the tell, right? And I don't know anybody watching right now if demonstration is one of your trust languages, or maybe you're a leader or you work in HR. How can we be demonstrating inclusivity? How can we be demonstrating belonging with our actions, right? Not just saying, hey, another pizza party, we love everybody, but actually tangibly showing that in our policies and our procedures, right, Stephen?
Yeah.
So for those who may work with someone who someone will say, oh, that doesn't matter to me. We talked about maybe it doesn't matter to you, but somebody you work with or report into needs your actions to be in alignment with the things that you say are important. What advice would you give to somebody who needs to adapt to a leadership style of being more action based?
Uh yeah. You know, I think it's getting start with the small steps, right? Get clear, put things on the table, right? And understand exactly. Look, I'm probably a bit more transparent than many, right? I like to just speak openly and candid. I'm somebody that will, if I sense that that's the case, right? I may be more apt to saying, "Hey, is this how you feel? Is there, an experience that you've had where um, you're not trusting of a particular situation?" I'm going to unpack a bit, and at the very least, Minda, I want to understand again, coming back to the communication side and coming back to just being able to kind of see what would help the situation. I want to know how, as a leader, how I can support that person, how I can kind of move things in the right direction. And look, I have had a few amazing leaders, especially those who are women. I'm thinking especially about even in the COVID season, right? Working working through having to caretake for a parent who was sick in that season. And I had so much on my plate and had a leader who said, look, uh, just incredible empathy in that situation and said, hey, I value you. I'm going to support you. How can I support you? And before I could even blink, whatever that person said, they would do, right? There was follow through continually. And I felt safe in that situation, in that season where uh, I wasn't able to give 100%, right? I was probably showing up 15% at certain points in time, but my 15% was still better, right? And that person saying, "Hey, how can I support you? How can I still create a safe environment for you to be able to show up at work, but more importantly, show up at home?" And and being a servant leader, right? And carrying through. And so a lot of what we talked about through the conversation, right? It's communication, it's clarification, and then it's a commitment to that follow through.
Listen, demonstration and follow through. Follow through is another trust language we talked about yesterday with Kanika. They go hand in hand, right? Because sometimes it's the one action that people need to see. And if you have not been, if your actions haven't been aligning with the values that you've been stating, you get a chance to make it right, right? First, acknowledge that we've dropped the ball, that we haven't been do alignment with some of the things that we said were important. Talk about that. Be transparent, which is another trust language, and then consistently show up. in the behaviors, right? We get to do that. That is something you don't need to.
Behaviors.
The behaviors.
The
Okay.
behaviors, yes.
Somebody needs you to shift your behavior right now, right? And we get to do that through the power of trust. Listen, trust may be on the ground at 10:15, but your actions could make it soar by 10:30. That action, the behavior, the wording, right? Like we get the chance to be able to be better communicators, not just talking a big talk, right? We all know those people in the meeting who have all the grand things to say, the $10 words, but you can't depend on them to do anything different when they walk out of that meeting. Be a different type of person. Somebody needs your actions. Somebody needs your demonstration. Somebody needs a modification in your behavior to align that enhances trust and not erode trust. And we all, listen, this isn't a point the finger. We all can be better after this LinkedIn Live on our behaviors, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it's not pretty, right? Oftentimes it's not pretty. As you're talking, another, and I know we're coming up on time, I was thinking of a situation where, look, I was asked to build a team, asked somebody to jump on and build this thing with me, and promised a job title when we got to the place where we could expand, and a year out had the opportunity to onboard somebody who would have been an amazing asset, but that person wanted that title I promised to my person, and all my peers as other leaders wanted that title for that other person, and I had to make the decision in that moment. Do I value the commitment I made? Do I value my person? Am I going to follow through? And I had to demonstrate by going to fight, right? Because I almost lost that. My person heard what was happening. I was set to leave, right? Mm-hmm. And made the decision to fight, made the decision to demonstrate to my commitment, right? Yeah. And not only get that job title, but get the coins to support it, right?
Listen, that's the kind of leaders we want to be working with. It's the behavior, it's the demonstration. Because how easily could you have gone with groupthink and been like, okay, let's give it to somebody else? But you demonstrate they could trust you, right? We all want, nobody wakes up in the morning and say, how can I be untrustworthy today? But we come off that way sometimes in our behaviors, right? And so if you are a person that demonstration is important to you, that actions and behaviors are important to you, kudos to you. If there are ways in which someone you work with and you're identifying, you know what, they really value when my words align with my actions. We get to do that in our personal lives. We get to do that in our professional lives. And that gets to be the major flex, right? For people to say, Minda demonstrates that this is important to her. Final thing I want to say is I had a manager one point in my career named Steve, and I left an organization, and what do they call it? A boomerang employee, Stephen? So I was a boomerang employee, and he approached me and he said, we want you back. We should have never let you go. And they didn't let me go. I left because there was stuff going on, but we should have fought. We should have demonstrated. And would you consider coming back? And when I did come back, he demonstrated the money was right when I came back. The requirements for me to be able to come back, the title that I needed, right? He fought for me so that he could open up that door and demonstrate that this is going to be a different kind of place for you when you come back, right? And I always value his actions, because he could have said all the things, because we know when people get hired, they get promised a whole lot of stuff that never, it's like smoke and mirrors, right? Mm-hmm. And he demonstrated that to me, and I will forever be grateful, because it's those moments where you've kind of lost trust in your leaders, and then they show up for you with the actions, and you're like, okay, I'm down for another day at the job. Yeah. So, but as we land the plane, Stephen, any final thoughts or things that are coming up for you that you want to share with those who are watching us live or watch us later?
I want to just say, Minda Harts, you are somebody that I trust. I had you on the show. I'm in this box frame, but if I wasn't, I'd show you a picture of Minda right here on the wall on a grid behind me on some of the favorite people I had the pleasure of interviewing on my podcast. And I've known you for 8 years. Rarely is there a time where I can't send you a voice note or a text and you could be getting on a stage to keynote. You're going to hit me back. If I need encouragement, if I need to be challenged, if I need to be supported, you're a great little sister who, provides that support. And you've demonstrated that over 8 years, right? So you authored the book, but I'm here to validate the author, right? And say, you are somebody who is trustworthy, and you've demonstrated that over the long term. So I appreciate you. I'm proud of you. I'm happy to see you in my feed every day, working hard to get this book out there. So congrats to you once again.
Thank you. Thank you. You're going to make me cry. I feel like both of us, well, I trust you. I mean, I've shared things with you that I haven't said out loud with people who know me the longest in my life. And you demonstrate constantly what a true friend, colleague, family is. And I thank you for that. You don't just tell me, Minda, let's talk about something, or I'm here for you. You demonstrate that. You're like, what day are you available? Let's put it on the calendar. Let's talk about things and let's strategize. You constantly demonstrate, even on those moments where I'm like, Stephen, what am I going to do with this book? What's going on? And you're like, okay, let's talk about it. And you demonstrate that you're there for me. And you've been that for me from the first book to the fourth book, outside of books. And so your actions always align with your behaviors for me. And I'll run over hot coals for you, because trust is there, and it's the foundation. Somebody said it in the comments, trust is the foundation. And listen, we can't just, trust has to be earned, and trust has to be demonstrated. It's not a one-time event. Stephen can't say, I trusted you back 8 years ago. No, he constantly demonstrates that trust is still important, and I try to do the same. And so let's do that for the people that we work with. Let's do that for the people that we love and that love us, because somebody needs that from one of us today. And so we get to change our behaviors. How can people find you, Stephen A. Hart?
You just said it, StephenAHart.com. And I am Stephen A. Hart on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on all the channels.
And if you need a CMO in your life, I dropped the link into Blu Oak Marketing. Make sure you get that. Make sure you share this with a friend, tag them, because our actions can align better. Each and every one of us can do better. Trust is not a one-time event. It's a lifestyle. So have a great week. We'll be back here tomorrow with a new trust language at 10 a.m. Have a great week and keep securing your seat. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Minda.